Breaking news that's sending shockwaves through Westminster right now. Just 1 minute ago, in an unprecedented move that's never been seen in British political history, the Supreme Court has issued a direct order demanding the immediate resignation of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. This isn't speculation, this isn't rumour, this is happening right now as we speak. Documents that were meant to stay buried forever have just exploded into the public domain during a live television broadcast. And what they reveal is so devastating that the highest court in the land had no choice but to intervene. The Prime Minister's office is in complete chaos, MPs are scrambling for answers, and the British public is watching in absolute disbelief as their government crumbles before their eyes. What was revealed on that live broadcast was so shocking, so damning, that it's not just ending a political career, it's threatening to bring down the entire establishment. This is the story that's gripping the nation right now, and you need to hear every single detail of what just happened. The scene inside the Supreme Court chamber just moments ago was unlike anything Britain has ever witnessed. Senior justices, faces grave and resolute, delivered a ruling that will be remembered for generations. The Chief Justice's voice was steady, but the words were earth-shattering. The court has determined that Prime Minister Keir Starmer has committed actions so serious, so fundamentally incompatible with his office, that he must step down immediately. This isn't a recommendation. This isn't a suggestion. This is a legal order from the highest judicial authority in the United Kingdom. The documents that triggered this unprecedented intervention were leaked during a live political debate on national television just minutes before the court's announcement. A whistleblower whose identity is still being protected managed to infiltrate the broadcast and expose classified files that paint a picture of corruption, deception, and abuse of power at the very highest levels of government. The revelations centre around secret financial dealings that Starmer allegedly orchestrated while serving in his previous role before becoming Prime Minister. The documents show a complex web of offshore accounts, suspicious transactions, and what appears to be direct coordination with foreign entities to influence British policy decisions. These aren't minor infractions or technical violations. These are serious allegations of treasonous conduct that strike at the heart of national security. The papers reveal coded communications between Starmer and representatives of a foreign power, discussing ways to manipulate parliamentary votes in exchange for personal financial gain. The sums involved are staggering, running into millions of pounds that were carefully hidden through shell companies and intermediaries designed to obscure the paper trail, but the financial crimes are only part of the story. The documents also expose a systematic cover-up that involved multiple government officials, intelligence officers, and even members of the judiciary itself. Starmer allegedly used his position and connections to silence whistleblowers, intimidate journalists, and manipulate legal proceedings to keep these secrets buried. There are references to surveillance operations conducted against British citizens who were getting too close to the truth, including opposition politicians and investigative reporters. The papers show that Starmer personally approved these operations, knowing full well they were illegal and unconstitutional. The evidence includes his own handwritten notes and digital signatures on authorisation forms that explicitly violate privacy laws and civil liberties protections. The live television moment when all this came crashing down was absolutely stunning. The political debate was proceeding normally when suddenly the broadcast feed was interrupted. A figure appeared on screen, face obscured, holding up documents to the camera. Before security could react, before producers could cut the feed, the whistleblower began reading directly from the papers. The details poured out in real time, broadcast to millions of viewers across the country. Panel members sat frozen in shock as allegations of corruption, foreign collusion, and criminal conspiracy were laid bare for everyone to see. The whistleblower's voice was calm but determined, methodically going through each piece of evidence, each transaction, each meeting that Starmer thought would never see the light of day. Social media exploded instantly, with reactions ranging from disbelief to outrage to demands for immediate action. Within minutes of the broadcast, the Supreme Court announced an emergency session. Legal experts are calling this the fastest judicial response in modern British history. The court had apparently been conducting its own private investigation into Starmer's conduct for weeks, but lacked the concrete evidence needed to proceed. The whistleblower's dramatic revelation provided exactly what they needed. Sources close to the court say the justices had been receiving anonymous tips for months, but couldn't act without verifiable documentation. The live broadcast changed everything, giving them the legal foundation to issue their extraordinary order. Parliamentary authorities are now scrambling to understand what comes next, because Britain has never faced this exact constitutional crisis before in its history. The Prime Minister's response has been telling in itself. Rather than immediately addressing the nation or denying the allegations, Starmer's office went completely dark for nearly 20 minutes after the broadcast. No statements, no press conferences, no clarifications. When a spokesperson finally emerged, the message was vague and defensive, talking about legal processes and proper procedures, but never actually denying any of the specific accusations. This non-denial has only fueled speculation that the documents are genuine and the allegations are true. Political analysts are noting that if Starmer had a legitimate defence, he would be screaming it from the rooftops right now. The silence speaks volumes about the credibility of what's been revealed. Opposition parties are demanding immediate answers and calling for Starmer to comply with the Supreme Court's order without delay. The leader of the opposition held an impromptu press conference declaring this the darkest day in modern British politics, but also a testament to the strength of democratic institutions that even a sitting Prime Minister cannot escape accountability. Members of Starmer's own party are reportedly in emergency meetings right now trying to decide whether to stand by their leader or cut ties to save themselves. Several Labour MPs have already released statements distancing themselves from the Prime Minister, claiming they had no knowledge of his alleged activities. The party's internal structure is fracturing in real time as members choose sides between loyalty and self-preservation. The legal implications of what's unfolding right now go far beyond just one man's political career. Constitutional experts are calling this moment a fundamental test of British democracy and the rule of law. The Supreme Court's order represents an assertion of judicial authority that hasn't been exercised in this manner for centuries, possibly ever, in the modern parliamentary system. What makes this situation so extraordinary is that the court isn't just suggesting Starmer should resign for political reasons. They're stating he must resign based on legal findings of misconduct that render him unfit to hold office. The documents revealed during that live broadcast contain evidence that has been verified by multiple independent sources in the hours since the revelation. Forensic analysts have examined the digital signatures and metadata, confirming these are authentic government documents, not fabrications or forgeries. The chain of custody can be traced back to secure government servers, meaning someone with high-level access deliberately chose to expose these secrets to the public. The specific charges emerging from the documents paint a picture of systematic corruption that allegedly began years before Starmer entered Downing Street. The papers show he established relationships with foreign operatives while serving as Director of Public Prosecutions, a position that gave him access to sensitive intelligence and investigative capabilities. He allegedly used this access to identify wealthy individuals and corporations who were under investigation, then offered to influence outcomes in exchange for financial compensation paid to his network of offshore accounts. The sophistication of the scheme is remarkable, involving multiple jurisdictions, encrypted communications, and complex financial instruments designed to make tracking impossible. But the whistleblower had access to the decryption keys and banking records that reveal the full scope of the operation. Transaction logs show payments totalling over £15 million flowing through these channels over a period of 8 years. What's particularly damning is the evidence showing Starmer continued and expanded these activities after becoming Prime Minister. The documents include communications from just 3 months ago, proving this wasn't past behaviour he'd left behind, but ongoing criminal activity conducted from inside number 10 Downing Street. He allegedly influenced defence contracts, redirected foreign aid funds, and even compromised intelligence operations to benefit his foreign benefactors. There are references to classified briefings where Starmer received information about threats to British interests, then allegedly passed sanitised versions to his contacts abroad, giving them strategic advantages in negotiations and commercial dealings. Security experts are now reviewing every major government decision made during his tenure, trying to determine how many were influenced by these corrupt relationships rather than national interest. The foreign power most heavily implicated in the documents is sending shockwaves through international relations. While official sources are being careful about naming the country directly, analysis of the transaction records and communication patterns points to a nation that has been considered both a competitor and occasional partner to British interests. The revelation that this country had a compromised asset at the highest level of British government is causing emergency diplomatic consultations across European capitals. NATO allies are demanding explanations about what classified information might have been compromised and what operations might have been exposed. Intelligence sharing agreements that form the backbone of Western security cooperation are now under review because no one knows what Starmer might have leaked or how deeply the infiltration penetrated into Allied operations. The geopolitical ramifications extend far beyond Britain's borders, potentially reshaping international alliances and security arrangements. Back in Westminster, the political machinery is grinding to a halt as everyone tries to process what's happening. The cabinet held an emergency meeting that reportedly descended into shouting matches and accusations. Several senior ministers are demanding Starmer's immediate departure, while others are urging caution and due process. Sources inside the meeting say the Attorney General presented a legal analysis confirming the Supreme Court has the authority to issue such an order and that ignoring it would constitute contempt of court, potentially leading to criminal charges against anyone who aids in that defiance. The discussion then turned to succession planning and how to manage the transition if Starmer refuses to go voluntarily. The prospect of having to physically remove a sitting Prime Minister from office is unprecedented and terrifying for everyone involved. Constitutional scholars are being consulted about procedures that have never actually been used in practice, only theorised about in academic papers. Parliamentary procedure offers no clear roadmap for this situation because it was never imagined that a Prime Minister would be ordered to resign by the courts. Normally, resignation is a political decision made voluntarily, either due to losing party confidence or accepting responsibility for failures. But this is a legal mandate based on criminal findings, creating a collision between judicial and executive authority that the British system wasn't explicitly designed to handle. Some legal experts argue the Supreme Court has overstepped its bounds and that only Parliament through a vote of no confidence has the power to remove a Prime Minister. Others counter that when criminal activity is involved, the courts absolutely have jurisdiction to intervene regardless of someone's political position. This constitutional debate is happening in real time as the crisis unfolds, with no clear consensus on what the proper procedure should be. The nation is watching as its government attempts to navigate completely uncharted legal territory. The public reaction to these revelations has been absolutely explosive across every corner of the United Kingdom. Within hours of the live broadcast, protests began forming outside Downing Street, with crowds demanding immediate accountability and transparency. Citizens from all political backgrounds are united in their shock and anger that someone they entrusted with the highest office in the land allegedly betrayed that trust so completely. Social media platforms are overwhelmed with discussions, debates and demands for justice as millions of people try to process the magnitude of what's been exposed. The hashtags related to this scandal are trending globally, not just in Britain, as the world watches to see how one of the oldest democracies will handle this constitutional crisis. News organisations are running continuous coverage, bringing in legal experts, political analysts and former government officials to help explain the complex layers of this unfolding drama. International media outlets are positioning this as potentially the biggest political scandal in British history, surpassing even the most infamous moments of past decades. The whistleblower who triggered this entire chain of events remains anonymous and protected, but their motivations are becoming clearer through statements released through their legal representatives. They claim to have worked within the government system for years, watching as corruption spread like a disease through institutions that were supposed to serve the public in interest. The breaking point came when they witnessed Starmer allegedly compromise a security operation that put British lives at risk, all to protect his financial interests and foreign connections. Unable to use official channels because those channels were themselves compromised, the whistleblower made the extraordinary decision to go public in the most dramatic way possible. They knew their career was over, knew they might face prosecution themselves for leaking classified information, but believed the truth was more important than personal safety or legal consequences. Legal experts are debating whether this whistleblower should be considered a hero who saved democracy or a criminal who violated secrecy laws, though public opinion seems overwhelmingly supportive of their actions. The evidence continues to mount as more details emerge from the documents that were revealed. Investigative journalists who obtained copies of the materials are now publishing deep dive analyses that reveal even more troubling patterns. Financial records show that properties were purchased in Starmer's family members' names, using funds that can't be explained by their legitimate income sources. Luxury items, private travel, and exclusive memberships were all apparently funded through this network of corruption. The lifestyle being exposed stands in stark contrast to the image of a principled public servant that Starmer projected throughout his political career. Colleagues are coming forward with stories about suspicious meetings, unexplained trips abroad, and instances where Starmer inexplicably intervened in matters that should have been handled by subordinates. The pattern that emerges is of someone who systematically abused every position of authority he ever held, always working to enrich himself while maintaining a carefully crafted public persona. Political historians are already comparing this moment to the great constitutional crises of British history, trying to find precedents and parallels that might guide the resolution. Some point to the abdication crisis of the 1930s, when personal conduct made a monarch's position untenable, though that situation involved voluntary departure rather than forced removal. Others reference the fall of various prime ministers over scandals and failures, but none involved direct judicial intervention at this level. What makes this crisis unique is the combination of alleged criminal activity, foreign interference, and the complete breakdown of trust between the government and the governed. The foundations of the parliamentary system rest on certain assumptions about honour, integrity and accountability that Starmer's alleged actions have violated so thoroughly that the system itself is under strain. How Britain resolves this crisis will likely reshape constitutional understanding and potentially lead to reforms that prevent such situations from occurring again. The international intelligence community is conducting its own urgent assessment of the damage caused by Starmer's alleged compromises. Every piece of classified information he had access to during his tenure must now be considered potentially exposed to hostile foreign powers. Operations are being shut down, agents are being relocated, and intelligence methods are being changed because the security of all previous protocols has been destroyed. Allied nations that shared sensitive information with Britain under mutual defence agreements are furious that their secrets might have been sold to adversaries. The cost of this betrayal extends far beyond politics and money, potentially measured in lives lost or endangered by compromised operations. Intelligence officials are describing this as potentially the most damaging penetration of British security apparatus since the Cold War spy scandals. The work of rebuilding trust and security will take years and cost enormous resources, assuming it can be fully rebuilt at all. Meanwhile, the Labour Party itself is facing an existential crisis as members grapple with how their leader could have deceived them so completely. Party activists who worked tirelessly to get Starmer elected are expressing feelings of betrayal and questioning whether the entire organisation needs to be examined for other compromised individuals. The selection processes, vetting procedures and oversight mechanisms that allowed someone allegedly this corrupt to reach the highest levels are all under intense scrutiny.